Hello and welcome to another Crystal Confab where we are going to dive in with my crystal besties, Adam and Nicholas, to probably one of my absolute top five favorite crystals of all. And let me tell you, this episode is long overdue, and we are, I think, very excited to be making it happen properly, finally. Boys,
Let's be honest. Okay, so we have recorded this episode before. Actually, no, that's a lie. We have done this episode before. It was a brilliant episode. Ashley was here. We were funny. We cracked jokes. We were on point. And then when I went to end the recording, I realized that I hadn't hit record. So that was our first attempt. Then we had 1 week where we'd scheduled to do the re-record several weeks later, and a couple of us couldn't make it, so we had to cancel. So we're going for a third time lucky. So hopefully we'll be blessed by the Imperial Topaz gods today, and we'll be able to do an episode that does this beautiful crystal justice for sure. Nicholas, this is obviously an amazing crystal with a really interesting name with that Imperial. What can you share a little bit about the story of this crystal and how it's been used in the past?
So this is one of those gemstones that in history, its name has applied to a bunch of other things. And topaz is an interesting case because in a lot of the written lore, its name is derived from the location it was discovered. And that location is an island once called Topazios, which is now known as Zabargad, and it's been called St. John's Island. It's in the vicinity of Egypt. The problem is that if you go there and look at their geology, they lack topaz. Um, and the topaz referred to in the ancient manuscripts coming from this isle is not an orangey yellow fiery stone, but a yellowy green stone, the mineral forsterite in the olivine series. Now, gem olivines are also known as chrysolites, a word which in Greek means golden stone, chrysos and lithos, and once upon a time referred to topaz. So it's like a two-for-one case of mistaken identity, and sorting out which stone was which in history can be kind of challenging. By the time we get to the Middle Ages and in Middle English in particular, topaz could refer to any kind of yellow sapphire. That could include our more yellow than green olivines, as well as our imperial topaz, but it could also include citrine and sapphire and anything else that might appear yellow. And as a result, these days it's kind of hard to track which stone was which in the ancient writings, and sometimes the descriptions are based on other people's descriptions, which are based on other people's descriptions, which are based on someone who wrote it down never having seen the rock in the first place because they heard about a story somewhere. And that's kind of the history of what these lapidaries, these sacred texts about stones are like. We do have a couple of interesting folk etymologies, though, that I find really telling about the nature of this stone. One of them says that this remote island got its name Topazios not for the stone, but the other way around. The stone was named for it. And the reason they called the island Topazios was because it was hard to find. It's thought that the Greek word topazin, to divine, to scry, to seek, to attempt to locate, is the source of this word because you needed some sort of like divine intervention to be able to find this sacred isle shrouded in mists. And topaz has become a stone of seekers, a stone of courage, a stone that helps us, grab life by the horns and go out and make something of ourselves. This is, however, a folk etymology and probably not very factual. Instead, there is a Sanskrit root that is etymologically pretty close. The word is tapas, which means fiery. And that, of course, could be a reference to several different qualities of topaz. In our imperial topazes, it might describe the fiery color. But in any variety of topaz, it might describe the way they play with light, that really nice refraction that it's got, especially when cut and polished. And furthermore, there's one other way that this fiery name might relate to an unusual property of topaz. Topaz is pyroelectric, so when it is heated to a certain temperature, the expansion in the crystal lattice caused by that, because heat makes things expand, creates a tiny little electrical charge, much like piezoelectricity in quartz is caused by a deformation, mechanical deformation of the crystal lattice. This is a heat-induced deformation of the crystal lattice that causes the same thing. And as a result, when heated, topaz would be able to attract to it little bits of ash or paper or tiny little bits of silk, and took on the connotation of being a fiery stone that draws things to us. And of course, being a gem treasured in history, it is one that was valuable and remains so for the most part today, and is one we might use to attract wealth or fame or glory or success or courage or all kinds of other properties. The notion of imperial topaz, however, is a much more recent designation, and initially described a much narrower range of colors than most of us traditionally apply today. So topaz is one of those chameleon gems. Just a tiny little change in its chemistry can provide color centers that gives us blue and gold and colorless and gray and sometimes greens and blacks. But the imperial topaz is traditionally described as an orangey yellow, and that orange isn't just Crayola orange. It's like if you could dissolve a drop of pink inside gold, that would give you the color of imperial topaz. And true imperial topaz can lean very, very pink, sometimes with a little help, but not always. In other locations around the world, you'll find blush kind of champagne pinks. These are things that we find in particularly some parts of the US and Utah and in Pakistan. But probably the most beautiful topaz I've ever seen is the very, very rare and almost always irradiated violet topaz. It's out there. It's not super common. Most of it has been helped, but this quality of inner fire that the stone has, I think just really lights things up for us and makes it such a magical ally. No matter what it is we might be seeking, it's there to steer us in the right direction, to help us divine that direction in life, and to attract the influences we need to see it through.
What I love about topazes and their rarity as well, and especially our conversation today about Imperial Topaz, is it opens up the opportunity to talk about a concept that I don't think I've shared on the confabs before about crystal octaves. So you will hear it in octaves. Obviously, Nicholas being the musician will definitely know about octaves, but we also see it in different aspects of spirituality as well. We look at it in planets. We see that, there is planet Venus, and then a higher octave planet than that is Neptune. They both are to do with beauty, whereas Venus is very much to do with kind of personal beauty and personal love, whereas Neptune is more about the aesthetics and the arts at a bigger scale. And we see that with Mars and Pluto being a higher octave of that, and also Mercury and Uranus being a higher octave there as well. So where does that tie into our crystals? Well, we can look at sometimes that crystals will be a higher octave than ones that we're really used to. So we're all familiar with the classic sunstone and moonstone. As crystal collectors, probably very early on in our collections, we grab these amazing two crystals that definitely have their own merits. But as we want to kind of, I guess, evolve our crystal practices, we start to go looking for some of these rarer gems. And as Nicholas was saying before, there's some really stunning colors in topaz. Now, with our imperial topazes, I like to think of them as your higher octave than sunstone. So taking your relationship with the sun to a higher level. Your blue topazes, they would be your higher octave than a moonstone in that way. They bring in a real, blue topaz brings in a real peace, a real serenity, and also opens up more spiritual communication. But we can cover that later on. So what do we use that imperial topaz for? Nicholas touched on beautifully that idea of it is that very, from the crystal's actual ability to attract things to it, it is very much, it's a yang crystal. It's going to definitely help you to get out there and fulfill what you want to do and to achieve and to draw and kind of kick hit goals and tick off all those to-do things. Really, really powerful in that way. But on this deeper level, there are lots of things in this world that we are told we need to do. We need to find a partner. We need to maybe have kids. We need to have a house. We need to have a career, all those different types of things. But we know that we're all individuals. And what I find Imperial Topaz is really good for us to do is rather than just kind of succeeding and fulfilling that general term of success, and this is where I might reach for a sunstone, Imperial Topaz really resonates with your own astrology and what you're here to do. You see, we often look at our sun sign, also known as our zodiac sign or our star sign, as, that is who we are. And as we dive into astrology a little bit more, we're going to kind of fine tune it with our moon sign, talks about our inner world, and our Mercury is how we communicate, and so on and so on. Working with that sun sign and that zodiac energy in alignment with your Imperial Topaz really helps you to work out how you can succeed and be the best you can be. We're not all going to be great athletes. We're not all going to be great politicians. We're all not going to be great business people. But where can we shine? And this is a really great one for bringing in that aspect of allowing that inner sun to radiate, and to then, as you'll find, and if you caught our episode last week when we were talking about chart, life will direct you in a way to get you to where you're meant to be. And by having Imperial Topaz around and aligning with it and being authentically yourself, what you'll find is the universe will then start to, with more ease and more grace, bring you different opportunities and attract opportunities to you that will allow you to shine. We've all been in situations, maybe relationships, maybe jobs, where we're not shining and it feels stunted and it feels hard, where we're trying to basically shove shit up a hill. Imperial Topaz allows us to realign and really kind of go, right, when I shine, when I am myself, when I do what I'm meant to be doing, and maybe a better understanding of your astrology can help you with that, it's all going to align, things are going to fly to me, life's going to heat up, and it's going to be absolutely great. So I love it for really helping us to bring in that aspect of the sunstone, the sun's energy. It's great for working with sun deities, whether it be Apollo or Helios or Ra, whichever sun deity you're associated with as well. Love it for that. But if you're ready to kind of start up leveling, if you've kind of got a few crystals, then I would suggest you need to start looking. Now, you may need to save up your pennies a little bit, but look for a nice Imperial Topaz and a nice blue topaz and start working with them, with the sun and the moon. It could really up-level your work. How about yourself, Kyle? Why do you love this crystal?
Oh my goodness, so many ways. What's that Shakespeare play? Let me count the ways. For me, I've talked about this. Orange is my favorite color in crystals. It's like an immediate, like it draws me in straight away. For me, also, as Adam was kind of mentioning, that kind of drawing things towards yourself, making things happen. This one's a little bit of that pinker shade, which is really, really beautiful. For me, it kind of embodies, and I can speak from experience, Sagittarian energy and the levels that it has within us. We are known as the lucky sign, right? We're known as the ones that kind of create luck. And it's not through just being a fool. It's kind of just through putting yourself out there, embodying the fact that sometimes you need to just be on the front step, put yourself out there, say yes to things, kind of be okay making a fool of yourself, be okay making a mistake, being okay kind of not knowing the outcome, but putting yourself forward can create incredible opportunities that create more opportunities that create more opportunities. And it's this snowball effect of things falling into place in incredible ways that I know I've experienced through my own life, purely because I've just said yes to things. And I've just done the thing. And I've just gone, yes, I'm going to put myself out there. Yes, I'm going to put myself on stage. Yes, I'm going to put myself in front of people. And it then draws things in. It's like moths to a flame, but in a really good way. Like, you will be a lighthouse. You could be a fire that keeps people warm. When you embody fire, when you embody the flame, when you embody the sun, you give life to other people, right? When you live and you give life to yourself and you are having fun, you're enjoying life, doing things that make you feel good, help you to feel good, which helps you to be clearer, more positive, more active, more proactive, and more capable of solving problems, of dealing with shitty stuff that comes up, of being unbothered by things like that, right? It allows us to, all topaz has that like ability to cut through. It's like danburite, they grow in that way that kind of cuts through things energetically to like allow you to cut into things. And I find Imperial Topaz especially helps us to like cut out the things that hold us back from feeling good and feeling positive and feeling like we can have fun and we can dress silly and we can just do things that make us feel good. And it's not frivolous. It's actually so that we can be a better version of ourselves. We can be a more empowered version of ourselves. We can do more for others by lifting ourselves up and being that sunshine. But I think it also taps into like sunrise and sunset and the way light plays with everything, right? It's not just a ray, everyone sees it differently. It can diffract and it can change color. It can show us this full spectrum. Like you see the pinks and the purples with the oranges during sunrise and sunset, and it's over in a flash, right? And it's changing over those however many minutes it takes for the sunrise or to set, right? It's the same with topaz, right? Depending on what angle you shine at, depending on where the light comes, you get a different play of color, you get a different energy, and we're allowed to kind of shine differently on different days. We're allowed to be different to different people. We're allowed to be too bright for some people. If I'm too bright, put sunglasses on, right? It's not my problem. End of sentence, full stop. And we are allowed to feel less guilty about feeling good. We are allowed to be enthusiastic and playful and silly in other people's eyes. That's your perspective. I know what I'm doing is actually really important to me, regulating my energy, because if I don't regulate my energy, I might do something that puts me in jail. And I don't want that. I've said this before. Is it worth going to jail over? No, it's generally not worth going to jail over. And we want to like be joyful, not cranky, right? There's enough in the world to make us angry. We might as well do things that make us feel good. And it can be through satire, it can be through like taking the piss out of things, but it's still healthy to bring joy to situations. It's still a really important aspect of our lives to make sure that is a prioritized part of what we do in our lives to make sure everything else works out better. Because if we don't, everything else is more challenging. Everything else weighs us down more. Everything else is more difficult. And I have learned from living that experience that if you allow it, it will spiral downwards. But if you then flip that, the spiral goes up and outwards and it expands for you and more can come from it. And I really love, these are a couple of pieces from Mexico showing off a little bit of a deeper shade of the orange. I love that they just are so warming. Whenever I hold a topaz, as Nicholas mentioned, that like it charges, it literally charges electricity through heat. So it's literally charging you up when you're working with it. So why not work with some Imperial Topaz?
I love that analogy you had, Kyle, of like the sunrise and the sunset. And when we think about, sunrise, I love that energy. I got up an hour before the sun rose this morning. And as that sun rises, not only is there the beauty that you talked about as well, but there's an energy there. There's kind of around the sunrise, it's hard to be like, there's something magical about what will the day bring? How will the universe surprise and delight me? And I think Imperial Topaz kind of embodies that energy as well. And there's also that closing of a chapter or that closing of the day. And, my goal, my life goal one day is to have a life where I can actually sit outside and just watch the sunset every day because it's so spectacular. Every day is different. But there is that real energy again of letting go. And these are magical times. They're veil times. They're twilight times. And I think sitting with an Imperial Topaz, watching the sunrise, watching the sunset could be a really great way to set your day up and also just to bring yourself back at the end of the day when we have been in that real yang mode as well, couldn't it?
I would say yes, but also like if you're ready to go out at night, right? If you're ready for that transition of like the sun is setting and now those that need to go to sleep can go to sleep and now I'm going to shine, right? I think for night owls, Imperial Topaz could be a really beautiful way to help you to embody that brightness in the darkness.
Another thing I find, being an orange crystal, it's going to be beautiful for the sacral chakra. And I find the negative emotion that affects the sacral chakra the most is guilt. Now, what we do find, and it is, kind of an odd statement to make with three gentlemen speaking here, is that the majority of crystal workers seem to be female. And I find that a lot of women tend to have underactive sacral chakras because there's a guilt around the aspect of the sacral chakra, which is pleasure. How dare I do something that I enjoy, that brings pleasure to me when I've got a partner and I've got kids and I've got family and other people I've got to worry about first, and they put themselves last. And Kyle, do you think this would be a really great crystal to help us just bring more of that pleasure into our lives and get rid of that guilt around allowing ourselves to shine and not putting ourselves at the back of the bus or the back of the line instead of the front of the line?
As they say, anything can be guilt free if you take the guilt out of it, right? Like we are allowed to just have that piece of cake, buy that concert ticket, go on that trip. Like I think, and this is something I learned from my parents, like growing up as one of four kids, my parents prioritized going to gigs and having fun, going and having like weekends away, going on trips that were about them, that were separate from us. And it always allowed them to stay a strong, stable couple all the way to when my dad passed. And I think that's a really important thing is they always prioritized their pleasure, them having a good time. And I think that has allowed me to follow in the same thing. Like I love being able to do things that make me feel good. And I think it is important because, as I said, it helps you to feel clearer. It actually helps you to deal with the other stuff better because of mindset.
So true. And I think this is really a powerful crystal for when we shine. I think, like you said, your parents gave the example of this is how you live life. And I often look at those mothers, for example, that do everything for their children. And basically, what they're kind of breeding is children. They'll do everything for their children. They'll do everything for their children. Whereas a parent that gets out there and shines, or even if you're not a parent, an individual who shines and shows who they truly are, and Imperial Topaz helps you to do that, then I think this is, it's going to help you lead by example, do as I do, not as I say type thing. So beautiful for us to work through those issues of how do I be who I truly am. So I think for a lot of people that discover crystals, a lot of people I talk to are sometimes they've gone through I've raised my kids and now they're getting older and independent. I've started to look at what else there is to life, what I'm meant to be doing. This is a beautiful crystal for them particularly to work with for sure. Another thing I found it really, really great for is I find it really such an energizing crystal. Anyone who needs to get a bit more physical in their life, needs to maybe have a bit of an exercise rate routine, um, programming the crystal, holding it in the hand that you write with. So for most of us, that's going to be our right hand, and visualizing how you feel. I love the Scandinavian approach to the body is focus on what the body can do rather than what the body looks like. And I really love that, see yourself walking up that hill, playing with your children, swimming that, 10 laps, whatever that may be, and send that into the crystal. Now, especially in the winter, like me and Kyle freezing our little pushes off today. I've got an old granny heater next to me, actually. This is a really great one for helping to keep you motivated and focus on where you want your body to be so that it can do the things you want to do with your children, with with your own ambitions and that type of thing. Really powerful in that way. Nicholas, any practical ways you like to use your Imperial Topaz?
Topaz as a whole is a stone that I will use when I need to get really clear about where my intentions and my actions line up. So if I'm feeling like I'm having missteps with my manifestation, my magic, my life, I will use this as a stone for reflection. You can use the Imperial variety. I'm actually really fond of colorless topaz for this as well. When we look at the cross section of a topaz crystal, we can see that it has this orthorhombic crystal structure. So, in cross section, it's like a diamond, a rhombus. And when we're vacillating, when we're having difficulty kind of finding the pivot point to get things aligned, topaz is great for it. So we could journal with it. I like to meditate with it and just place it over my brow because I associate that with inner vision. And it doesn't matter what color your topaz is, you can still do that for that quality of inner illumination, mental illumination, life vision. But that's one of my applications for it.
How would you kind of separate blue topaz and an imperial topaz, Nicholas?
Usually when I look at different color variants of the same mineral species, I like to remind myself that chemically, structurally, optically, they have a lot more in common than they don't. The analogy one of my geology professors used once, if you take a 1 foot cube of quartz crystal and you want to turn it into amethyst, you need less iron than you have in the tip of a ballpoint pen. So they're mostly identical. So with all of our topaz in general, they're mostly identical, but there definitely is some theme and variations there. The blue topaz does have a kind of watery quality to it. For me, it's not so much about necessarily being cooling like water, but being moving like water. So both fire and water are in constant states of flux, just in different kinds of ways. So if we feel like maybe we want to have more movement but less heat added to a kind of situation or equation, we might try a blue topaz. If we really want to focus on the clarity and integrity of our vision, try a clear topaz. If you're lucky enough to have a bright pink or a purple one, you can just mail it to me so I can spend time with it, and then I'll tell you how I think they differ.
I was about to jump in and go, they're very bad luck and you best get rid of them, send them to Australia. Yeah. Amazing. Carl, what about yourself? Any practical uses for Imperial Topaz?
I love wearing or having topaz, especially Imperial Topaz, on me as a talisman on days when I need that self motivation, when I need to feel encouraged from within, when I need to just feel good about myself. And, days like this in the middle of winter where it's cold and my body hurts and it's not that easy to self motivate, I am definitely going to be clutching my topazes tightly before I go about the rest of my day.
Amazing. Well, we've finally done it. We have finished an Imperial Topaz episode. Thank you so much. I know we have a couple of listeners and viewers that have reached out to one of us and said, what about this crystal? And we keep on saying, it's coming, it's coming. So it's finally here. Remember, we have to decide what crystal to talk about this week. We do have some methods to our madness, but if you have requests, please, leave a comment underneath one of our videos or our podcast, or reach out to one of us and let us know, because we definitely want to make sure that you're the fourth person in these confabs and that you are getting to find out more about the crystals you love as well. We'll be back next week, providing our press record, and we'll cover another crystal. Until then, take care and blessed be.